When is a jelly roll more than a jelly roll? When it's an edible log. See how to clothe a jelly roll in chocolate bark and meringue mushrooms, and as a surprise, spun sugar moss when we make a bûche today on the French chef.
The French Chef is made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation.
Welcome to the French Chef. I'm Julia Child. This is a jelly roll in wolf's clothing. And this is the wolf. No, this is the jelly roll, perfectly naked, with a little chocolate filling in it, just like a regular jelly roll. And the wolf's clothing is this beautiful, white, sticky, snowy meringue, which by itself makes the mushrooms, and which with chocolate makes the frosting, and which with chocolate and butter makes the filling which you spread on the jelly roll. So, obviously, we're going to have to start in making a meringue. And there are quite a number of meringue formulas. The most usual one, called the meringue ordinaire, or the ordinary homegrown meringue, is just beaten egg whites into which you fold sugar. And that's the kind you use to make kisses out of. But this is the meringue italienne, or the Italian meringue with its fine Italian hand. And it's really a meringue of 1,000 uses. It's made out of beaten egg whites into which sugar syrup is whipped. And it turns into this beautiful stuff that you can eat just as it is. You can use it as a mousse, sort of as a mousse base, and for butter creams. And I think it's one of the most useful meringues to know. And it starts out with egg whites. And I have here in my hand 3 egg whites. And I'm going to beat them by machine, because as you see, if you try and do it by hand, though I'll show you how to do it, it just takes rather a long time. And by the machine, it's so easy to do. It's something you can do every day. Remember our rules for egg whites, which is they're at room temperature, otherwise they don't melt very fast. And you start beating them slow to break them up. And then as soon as they begin to foam like this, you put in a scant 1/4 teaspoon for 3 egg whites of cream of tartar, which acts as a stabilizer. It keeps them up. And then put in a little tiny bit of salt, just a pinch. And then gradually increase the beating to fast. And you should stand right over the mixer while you do it, because they beat up very fast. And you don't want to overbeat them. Now that's just about beaten to the right consistency. And then turn it very slow. And then I'm going to show you the sugar syrup. I'm not going to make the sugar syrup because we've made so much sugar syrup. And if we have to do it every time, we'll never get out of the kindergarten. This is 1 1/3 cups of sugar and about between 1/3 and 1/2 cup of water. And it's boiled to the soft ball stage, or to 238 degrees. And remember, the only trick in boiling sugar is that after you've put the sugar and water in the pan, you let the sugar completely dissolve so that the liquid is absolutely clear. And then you cover the pan and boil it hard until it gets to the soft ball stage. When the bubbles begin getting big and thick and sticky, then you've got your soft ball stage. And now you want the egg whites to begin making soft peaks. And then at that point, the sugar syrup goes in. I'm going to better keep that warm over there so it doesn't. Now those are what you call soft peaks. And now the hot sugar syrup goes right in. Well, the great thing about this is, because the sugar syrup is so easy to make, it cooks the egg whites because the syrup is so hot. And to clean your sugar pan, fill it with water and just let it boil along with the spoon in about a minute. It's perfectly clean. And then you want to beat the egg whites until they're cool, and they're going to make stiff peaks. And this is going to take about 6 or 8 minutes. And now if you're going to do it by hand, and there's some people who like to do all these things by hand. Here's your big whip, and here's a big bowl, and you just start beating until the egg whites are all right. Then you'd have your sugar syrup, and you pour that in. And then you just stand and you beat and beat and beat. Now here is an idea. Here's your meringue. Which is very good exercise. But I think that you're not going to... I think it's nice to do things by hand, but I think very often you'd hesitate to do it. So... this will take 6 or 8 minutes, so we're going to use this one that is already done. And it's thick, and it makes, as you can see how thick it is, and it makes little peaks that stand up on the beater. And this makes the mushrooms. There they are. And I'm going to show you, the mushrooms are in 2 parts. There's a top and there's a bottom. And you make them with a pastry bag. Get that out of the way. And here's a pastry bag, and we have a buttered no-stick pan. It's buttered and floured. Then we want to only take about 1/4 of the mushrooms, and they go into a pastry bag with a 3/16 inch tube. You don't really need very much. You only need 5 or 6 mushrooms. But the good thing about mushroom meringues made from this kind of a mixture is that they cook quite quickly and they stay crisp fairly well. Now we're going to make the tops first. And you see, squeeze, turn the bag, and lift up like that. I'm just going to do a token there. That's a rather messy one, but sometimes mushrooms do look messy, so you don't need to worry, because it's supposed to look woodsy. And then have a spatula dipped in a little bit of water and smooth them off, because mushrooms are not supposed to have pointed tips. That one you could really consider to be sort of a woodsy something or other. That's what's nice about making things like they're supposed to be woodsy, that they're rather informal. And now we want to make the tiny pieces for the mushrooms. And rather than having to fill another bag, you can just make it out of make a paper cone. I'll show you. You can fit it over the bag. And you grab a right triangle by its hypotenuse and fold the 2 edges around up to the point. I'll do that again. Grab the hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse becomes the point. And it doesn't sound reasonable, but when you do it, you see that it works. And then just stick your pastry bag in here and make little bottom things. And these can be rather strange shaped, as though dwarfs had sat on them. I'll make another strange shape there. And you want about, say, 6 or 8 of these, and then funny little shapes if you have anything left. And the mushrooms are not going to, these shapes are not going to change shape at all when they go into the oven. And they're not going to color at all. They're going to stay just sort of a very pale color so that you can put everything just as close together as you want. I'll make one more large one because I don't think I did them so well. There. And now these go into the oven. And they don't really bake, they just dry out. And this goes into a 200-degree oven. And they take about an hour or an hour and a half. And I'll show you what they look like when they're done and how you can tell. You see, those are just a very pale yellow, and they're done when you can just push them off. And once you've made them, as like any meringue, they will soften up if the weather is damp. So if either keep them in a warming oven at about 80 or 90 degrees, or else just wrap them airtight and freeze them. Those are your two alternatives. Freezing works out extremely well. Now we're ready to do something more with the meringue. That meringue, actually, if you do it ahead of time, you should beat it up a little bit more. I'm going to take this unbeaten one off and beat up the ready-made one. And this meringue now is going to be turn into both frosting and filling. I'm going to, ow! I forgot to do the bowl. There. And first it's going to have chocolate in it. And we have here, this is 12, with 3 packages of 4 ounces, it's 12 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate, melted with 1/3 cup of strong coffee. And it's very important that it be just as smooth as possible. As you can see how smooth it is there. And we've done a lot of chocolate melting before, and remember that to melt it, you put the chocolate and the coffee in a pan of hot water like this and cover it up. And make sure that it's not simmering water, because if it is simmering, sometimes very frequently the chocolate can turn grainy. If by any chance it does turn grainy, you can usually fix it up by putting in a spoonful of water and stirring it around, and then putting in a little tiny bit more water and stirring it around. But for a frosting, you just can't use it at all unless it's an absolutely smooth cream like this. And now you put this 12 ounces of chocolate right into your meringue. Now this is also going to have some flavoring in. Some vanilla and some rum. That's going to have a tablespoon of pure vanilla extract. And then 2 or 3 tablespoons of rum. If you like rum, I think it goes awfully well with chocolate. Some people like orange liqueur. Or maybe because it already has coffee in it, you won't feel that you need any more flavoring. And now, after you've gotten all of this mixed in, you have the decision as to really what else you're going to do for your frosting and filling. This can now become a real French butter cream if you beat in a half pound of soft butter. But if you do so, as a frosting, it's going to be very fragile and you'll have to keep it in the refrigerator. So I think a good thing to do is to beat in just some butter now to give it a, I'm going to beat in just half a stick. That would be 2 ounces of soft, unsalted butter. And then take it off the mixer without making any more dribbles than necessary. And put in a third of it. Save a third of it for the filling. Now here's a third of this is for the filling, and then you can beat into this 2, 3, 4 more tablespoons of butter, and then spread it over your jelly roll and just roll it up. And then this is going to be for the frosting, this 2/3 of this beautiful meringue. And as you see, it's very soft now, and you're going to have to thicken it up a little bit. So I'm going to put in a little bit of cocoa, which will stiffen it. That's about 2 big spoonfuls of cocoa. But then you should also chill it until it's of spreading consistency, because look at this frosting here. You see, this is stayed out, but you can press it. It's still very good to eat, but lights and heat don't hurt it. So after you mix this up, put it in the refrigerator and let it chill to spreading consistency, which is about like this. That's just about right. And so now that's going to go on to the jelly roll. And put some wax paper between the 2 sides of the jelly roll, and then we want to cut off 2 of the ends on the bias to make it look a little more like a log. And then you can also save those ends. I'm going to move this back a little bit and use them for branches, as you'll see in a moment. And it doesn't make any difference if you made any little flubs, because those you can cover up with your frosting. That's got too much powdered sugar on it. I'm going to get that off. I put the powdered sugar on to keep it soft. Put the frosting on really as though it were bark. And don't be too neat or it won't look real. And you'll see as we go along, you're going to get branches and bumps and moss, and so don't worry if it looks messy. Then we're going to make some branches. There you are. I'll take off the paper. This is going to have some leaves, so even if I make some little flubs around, that isn't going to make too much difference. I'm just going to make one branch here with a little bit of that leftover cake. Not going to look very, very branchy. but it'll look loggy anyway. If that doesn't work it out, you can just make it look lumpy. Having some of that frosting is coming off. This is a very tender jelly roll, which is going to make it very good eating, but rather tough frosting. But I can cover off these spillies perfectly well by, that doesn't look like a branch at all, but that doesn't make any difference. Sometimes things don't turn out as beautifully as you want, but you can always cover things up. Then we also have powdered sugar and cocoa, so as long as it looks barky and woodsy, that's just fine. So this front part here will be covered up. Try to make things look as neat as possible. And now we have the mushrooms. Now I've got a little knife, and I'm going to show you some assembled ones so you see how they are. You see that's just a bottom and a top. So take your top and make a little hole in it with your knife, and then take one of these funny little bottoms and dip it into some of your frosting, and then just stick it in, and then just arrange it on the log. There's another one. Make a little hole. That's a weird looking little thing, but that is what nature does in the woods. Put on a few more. There's another one. Well, that one came apart. And now you want to have a little snow. That's some powdered sugar in a sieve. And then you want to have, so that the mushrooms should have a little dark on them, so put a little cocoa through a sieve. And then we can have leaves around, and that will cover up any little things that have spilled. This is a Yule log, a Buche de Noël, so we have holly in it. And now we're going to make some spun sugar moss, which is going to go around the Buche. And that's a great deal of fun. And for this, you have to have caramel. And the caramel is simply sugar syrup that's boiled down to the caramel stage. And this was 1 cup of sugar and 1/3 cup of water and about 3 tablespoons of corn syrup, and just boiled. This is exactly the same as you remember when we worked with that wonderful old pâtissier and made gâteau in a cage, a caramel dome. It's exactly the same kind of thing. And with this you have to wait until the caramel is cooled, and then you're going to, this is an oiled broom handle, and you're going to wave this up. There, can you see that that's doing it? I think I'll take the towel off so you can see this. And this is plenty of newspaper on the floor. You could do this outside on the grass. That would be good for the grass. You see, you're just waving your fork. And it doesn't begin to work until the caramel has begun to thicken and cool a little bit. You see, the cooler it is, the thicker the strands. It's really awfully silly, but I think it's great fun. And you find if the day is humid that you make the caramel and then it all gets googly. So unless it's if it's a very dry day, you can make it a little bit ahead of time. But I think the best thing to do is make it just about at the last minute. And this is something that children just adore making. And it takes quite a while to get a lot of caramel going. I first saw this in Paris. There was a wonderful old cook who was making it on somebody's terrace on the 7th floor of an apartment building. And there was caramel sort of dripping all down onto the floor, all the way down. There, I think that is probably just about enough. Now, when you're ready to take it, just pull it off your broom handle, and there you are, like maidenhair fern. And I'm going to put this on our beautiful buche here. And the question is exactly how it should be draped. I think I'll just put it over the top like a veil. Maybe put another leaf on the top there to hold it down. Now that certainly would be surprising if we found that in a forest, but I think it has a pleasantly woodsy look, and it's a very festive one. But I think, as I said, I don't think you should try and put the spun sugar on very soon because something might happen to it. Last minute work. Now here is our Bûche de Noël, our Christmas Yule log. I think the great thing about a log is that you don't have to serve it just for Christmas. It can go for really any day of the year. And if you can serve it on Bastille Day, which is July the 14th. And if you do, you can cut it with a guillotine. And if you want to serve it on Washington's birthday, cut it with a hatchet. And it's marvelous on the 4th of July. That makes a real flair. So, that's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit.
The French Chef has been made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation. Julia Child is co-author of Mastering the Art of French Cooking, Volumes 1 and 2.